Hi, this is Jack Baldwin with Reynard Architectural Designs, and you're listening to our latest episode of Ask an Architect. For this podcast, we got to sit down and chat with Coraima Perez. She's a freshman at Kennesaw State University, and she is studying architecture. And we did kind of an interview with one another for a class project, but also wanted to record our conversation and share it with anyone who listens to Ask an Architect, because I thought it was really fun. We got to talk about the design process, what she's learning in architectural school, and a little bit about the business of architecture and the process of getting people's homes designed and built. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Ask an Architect, and thanks for listening. Hey, Coraima, this is Jack Baldwin with Reynard Architectural Designs. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I've got a cup of coffee, so I'm happy.
That's nice. I had a cup of tea.
And Coraima, you are a freshman at Kennesaw State University, right?
I am.
That's cool. That's where I went to school. I studied theater, oddly enough, at Kennesaw State, but you are an architecture major?
Yes, I am.
Well, how do you like architecture so far?
At first, I didn't think I'd like it. If anything, I chose a career because one, I really enjoy art. I thought it could go well. The first week, it was pretty weird, especially since we're just all trying to get accustomed to like the whole schedule and stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, I seem to enjoy it. I really enjoy the readings that we've been like discussing and analyzing, especially when it comes to like the different floor plans that people like decide to discover. And I really enjoy the architects that we're talking about, like Floyd L. Wright, I believe that's his name.
Oh, Frank Lloyd Wright, yes.
Yes, that guy.
Yeah.
And I really like, I think it was Falling Water, the most iconic one that he's made.
That
And
is.
yes,
Yeah.
it was very innovative in a way. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that's cool. Well, I think you chose the right path if you're already getting this enthusiastic about it early on, but stick with it. It can get challenging.
Oh yeah, I'm prepared for the challenging parts.
What was the first thing you wanted to talk about in terms of architecture and just how it can help you?
Well, overall, I wanted to know your definition of being an architect at first, because everyone has their own different meaning to their own job, right? Like some people take more out of certain skill sets, or just whatever you've been learning in your time as an architect.
Well, yeah, just to be clear, I run an architectural business, so I am more sales, marketing, and business leadership side of our firm. I grew up around architecture. My grandfather was an architect all of his life, and my dad also was an architect, still is an architect. They were licensed and went to Georgia Tech and got their master's in architecture. I took a little bit of a different path. Like I said, I studied theater and then got into sales out of college. I started my own design firm with a couple of partners this year, but I think that puts me in a place to be able to speak about the business of architecture and what it means to work with an architect, since that's a lot of what I do every day, is help people pair their projects with an architect so that they can get their homes designed, is what we do. But to me, to answer your question, what does it mean to be an architect? There's kind of a little bit of different definitions depending on who you ask. In some sense, you're not really. Some people would say you're not an architect unless you're licensed. Once you get licensed, you actually become an architect. Once you get, and that could be NCARB, which is a licensing agency, or AIA, the American Institute of Architecture. They give out licenses, and that's based on how many hours that you've worked under a licensed architect, and that's based on being able to pass a test. In short, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's kind of what you have to do to become licensed, and then you get licensed in different states. But at our firm, at Reynard Architectural Designs, we do we're pretty careful to say we do architectural designs. So we have designers who are doing architectural work. So in that sense, they're doing a lot of what architects do for our clients all the time. We provide floor plans, elevations. We do window and door schedules, building sections, architectural details. We put together a cover sheet. We put together all the notes. In our case, we do a lot of the structural documents, which are needed to get a building permit and get a house built. So yeah, if you want to use a very loose definition of what it means to be an architect, it's somebody who sits down to provide the drawings for a client that they will then use to either get a building permit. So, like the city or the county gives you a permit so you can build your home, or also for the drawings that a contractor is going to need to build with. And then a very more strict definition would be you're talking about a licensed architect, somebody who's actually gone through and gotten licensed. So those are the two big differences between, I guess to say like what makes up an architect.
Well, since you mentioned that you were part of more of the business aspect of both the architectural designs, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
How would your leadership skills would be presented in an architectural firm? Because I'm assuming that it's a lot different in an architectural firm than, like, let's say a lawyer business.
Oh yeah. Well, what I see myself doing a lot of times is I'm connecting people who may not know what they need an architect for, or may not know which architect they want to work with. And I represent our firm. So I help us find clients, and I help us, our company find the right types of clients that have the right types of jobs that are good for our team. So my leadership would be, going out and finding good clients, interviewing them, having them interview us, finding out if there's a good fit. And if there's a good fit between our firm and the client, then a lot of what I do is lead the project. So I match a project designer or an architect and other labor. Sometimes I have to find additional labor, meaning additional workers to help us get a project done. That could be a contractor, that could be a structural engineer. There's a number of different people that we might need, helping them get a building permit. So there might be some phone calls that we make on their behalf. But yeah, leading our team means making sure that a project goes smoothly, that everybody gets paid, making sure that the client is happy, that they feel good about their selection and working with us. Our clients, they may know that they're getting, oh, I need an architectural set to build my home, but they may not know what all that means. And so I find it very important to make sure that I kind of translate for them what they're getting when they work with us. And then also that I do a good job of making sure my team, my project team, knows what they're getting into early on. And then, yeah, like I said, making sure everybody gets paid on time, making sure that projects get delivered on time, making sure that we do what we say we're going to do, that there's no loose ends. I also, just lead a team of other business people. So, I have a financial person, she's kind of our CFO, our chief financial officer. And so we work together to lead our team and make sure that our the business side of our company is running smoothly. So yeah, I think that when you take on a project, it makes up a lot of leaders. It does take more than just one leader, but it's very important to make sure that you have a vision, which is ultimately the house being built for our client. But if we stay focused on that vision, that's how we become good leaders, is we make sure that we don't get off course, that we want to serve our clients really well.
Okay, then how would you say that your leadership role has like evolved during the time that you've been managing stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I was just selling, first I was just, calling up a client, finding out what they need and giving them a price. And then, all right, well, good luck. And now there's a lot more involved where I sit down, try to make more time and effort to interview a client and get to know their project better. That's the biggest thing. I may not be the one sitting down and drawing everything that they're going to need in their home design, but listening is very, very important for every architect. So when I sit down, a lot of what I'm doing is trying to get as much information up front from the client as possible so that they can have a successful project. The more that they talk and the more that we listen, the better the project is going to go. So I'd say that's the biggest place that I've grown as a leader in our firm is learning to listen better, learning to take better notes, learning to ask better questions about what they want out of their home, out of their design, what kind of experience they want to have, and then making sure that our project team gets that vision. If they understand what the client really wants, then we're going to provide a really good project for them. And also getting more involved, not stepping back when it gets too complicated or too messy, but stepping into the project and making sure that I can help, connect loose ends. Maybe it's making a phone call, because ultimately we're getting people to draft and draw a vision. Somebody's like if you came to me, Coraima, and said, hey, I really want to design a house and I want it to look this way and feel this way, and you can tell me all your ideas and dreams and visions, but we ultimately got to draw it. So the more we listen to your ideas and the more we listen to what you really want out of your house, the better job we're going to do of actually drawing it the way that you want it. And that's ultimately going to lead to the home getting built the way you want it.
So from what I hear, communication is a very important skill to have as an architect.
Absolutely. Whether you're doing the drawing or selling the project, I still see myself involved in the architectural process very early on, even if I'm not sitting down and doing the drawing day to day, because it's my job to make sure that our clients' ideas are being heard. So yeah, we go on site, we take a lot of pictures, we listen a lot. But that's a good observation too, Coraima, is that yes, in architecture, if you're not communicating well, it's going to be very difficult to see a successful project happen.
I'd like to know the difference between like talking to a client and then talking to colleagues, because I'm sure there's a big difference.
Well, when I talk to a client, I'm constantly just learning. I think that's one thing. I'm still learning with my colleagues. I would say James Knight, the guy who I work with closely, I'm always asking questions to him too, just learning, what can be done or what cannot be done, how it needs to be done. When I'm talking to a client, yeah, I'd say I'm wanting to understand what their vision for their home is. And so that's kind of our agenda is, what do you want to get out of this? Are we on the right track?
As an art major in high school, I know talking to my professors and like receiving critiques from them was a lot different from talking to like some of the classmates of mine.
Oh yeah.
In terms of like different visions, of course. Even now in our starting architecture school, it's been a lot different talking to my like peers, I guess you could say, when it comes to like how should I finish this model? Should it be more straight with the lines that I use to represent like a plane in a way? And like talking to my professor was a lot different as well. I mean, she was very encouraging, of course, but it's like, you get a different sense of perspective from them.
Yeah, I think you're talking about feedback, it sounds like. And the way that we receive feedback from a client, we're constantly looking for that feedback to get, find out, is this the home you want? We don't know that we're on the right track unless we get feedback and listen to it and apply it. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride a little bit and hear the client say they don't like something. But that's part of the process. I would say as a leader too, there's business decisions that I've made that go into our architecture business. And sometimes I've made bad decisions. And I had to listen to feedback from my colleagues where they said, hey, that's not helping us. And that's hard too. But if I don't surround myself with people who can push back and tell me, hey, maybe this is how we should do it next time, then we're not going to get better. But it also, when people tell you, hey, this works, then they really mean it. So yeah, I think in the way you're talking about, like talking to colleagues on like an art project or professor, you need people who are mentors, who are going to guide you and help you get stronger. And you also need people who are going to push you and be honest with you. And in between that, you need people who care about where you're going above all. If they care enough to tell you the truth, and that means that they want to see you improve. They're not just giving you feedback just to beat you up. And if you have the maturity to receive feedback as helpful, then you can become a better leader all the time.
And how would you recommend like someone starting out in the field, like to maintain like a very professional viewpoint about like projects, or like we were saying, like being critiqued?
Oh, I'm still learning that, Karima. And I think we all are. But yeah, I think learning to manage your emotions is very important, in professionalism. And we all have them. So I think if I was going to give anybody advice about that, I'd say learn to recognize your emotions first. Don't push them down. Don't hide them or pretend like they're not there. But first, learn how to recognize what they are and where they're coming from. And then take the time to breathe. Actually breathing and sitting quietly and looking at what you're feeling. And so instead of just reacting to an emotion, you can handle it in a professional way. So yeah, professionalism is very important in our field.
Well, then I would like to ask you this. How would you incorporate someone's diverse viewpoint into your work? Like, would you say that architects are really good at receiving feedback? I'm assuming they are really good at that, and incorporating it into their projects.
Yeah, some of them are, I think. But again, if you don't, that's why the interview process at the very beginning is so important. If you're going to give feedback and receive feedback, it needs to start very early on.
How inclusive is the architectural work field, or what would you think we need to improve more in that field?
We have on our team, there's only 4 of us that work for Reynard Architectural Designs, but one of our employees is Australian, so he grew up in Sydney. I have another, and that's James. James is from Australia. Divya, he lives here in Atlanta, and he's originally from Ahmedabad in India, and he moved here from India to study architecture in the United States. And of course, we have a woman who's my co-founder and partner, Kaylin. So we have a diverse team already just within the 4 of us, and that's important to me. I think women have a different perspective on things than men. I think somebody who grew up in a different country has a different perspective than I do. Those are all just examples of people looking at things from a different point of view because of their background or because of their gender or because of their ethnicity. And it's not better or worse, it's just different. And I think if you can incorporate that diversity and just listen to the differences or just where people are coming from, and personality differences, people are wired differently, and they bring different viewpoints just because of how they think. And that's important to listen to and give credibility to. With our clients, we had a client who had toured all over the world as part of his career. And so he had spent time in Asia. He'd spent time in Thailand and Vietnam and Korea. And when he came back to the United States, he wanted to build a home that had Asian influence in the style of his home. And he was very clear about that. So his viewpoint from his world experience gave him the kind of viewpoint where he wanted to build an Asian style home.
I'm glad you brought up with the client that wanted an Asian inspired home, because I wanted to ask about how has America incorporated different architectural styles from like different countries, right? And like what makes American architecture stand out from the rest?
Oh, that's a great question. So the good thing about Atlanta is that there are people, like I said, from all over the world who want to bring some elements from other parts of the world into their architecture. And yeah, I mean, in the North Georgia area where we work, a lot of people like more of a rustic type of cabin inspired home, and we still do a lot of those. But even those, if you really trace it back, those have a lot of roots in American history and settling and in pioneerism. And so it is interesting to see how many different elements can come together just through the American experience. So I would say, like, if to try to answer your question about like what kind of styles are in America, they're so different. And what's neat is that everybody has a different take on it. And I think our job is to kind of capture what our client's take is and turn it into something they can live in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a very complicated question because, like, I've been to El Salvador, I've been to Italy as well, and I've been here in America as well. Like, the different types of homes are very different, very different.
What have you observed in architecture in El Salvador, and have you visited Mexico as well?
No, unfortunately not, but they're kind of similar in certain ways, right?
But what did you observe in El Salvador? Did you observe any architecture you really liked there?
Well, specifically, well, the part that where my mom lived, it wasn't like, it was it was faced in poverty, right? So most of the people over there, they had to be really resourceful, right? They used like aluminum sheets, they used like sticks, they used mud, right? Clay.
Yeah.
It was very impressive to see what they could actually build. And the weird thing over there, it's like the colonias, neighborhoods, I guess you could call them. They're kind of
Yeah.
different, right? They actually have like an open ceiling type of thing. That way water drips down into the well so they can like pick up more water and like use it for like cooking and stuff. And like the way it's set up as well, it's like sometimes like the floor caves in. Like so
Yeah.
you can have like a little open patio type of thing, but in the middle of your house as well. And then tiles are very different as well over there. It's like, you find whatever you can. You have to be really
Yeah.
resourceful over there, right?
I think, yeah, but that's a type of architecture as well. If you have a design in mind, even if you're just drawing upon what's available to you, there's intention behind the design.
Yeah, from here's like creativity plays a big part of it too. Like
Absolutely.
you have to be creative in order to like build something like resourceful at least. And I'd like to ask you, do you believe that creativity is a major attribute that architects must have, right? Or do you think that it can be overlooked by a different skill?
I think it absolutely is important, and it's not just creativity in terms of making it look unique. I think creativity also means finding a way to keep within a budget. But yes, absolutely, architects, we as business people have to be creative in how we approach things too. So I think it's a very big role in successful architectural projects. But yeah, having those skills of how to think creatively, how to think critically, and how to think with the end in mind are all going to serve you very well.
I'm glad you brought up critical thinking because that's also one of the foundations for our honors thing. So
Okay.
I was wondering as well, why do you think young architects should hone in more of their critical thinking skills? Because I'm sure it's a very important skill to have.
So just because you're going to go design a building doesn't mean that it's not going to have some challenges. You need to be able to think about, is this client the right fit for me? Is this project the right fit for me? Maybe something didn't go as planned, but how do I, like, kind of like you're talking about people in El Salvador, how do I become resourceful with what I have?
I also want to talk about like resources maybe someone could use like to get inspiration for like maybe one of their projects that they might have, or just like in
Yeah.
general designing a building.
I mean, I just read. I read as much as possible. Like I grab magazines, and I think architects should too. Just grab magazines, grab books, and read as much as possible. Read the descriptions of homes. They'll tell you a lot about why people chose the things that they chose. It'll help you think about like context. If you understand a home that's built in Los Angeles versus a home that's built in El Salvador, or a home that's built in, Amsterdam versus a home that's built in Atlanta, you understand the process that is different in each place. And you understand why people chose what they chose, what budgets they had to work with, what their goals were, what their objectives were. Why did they choose this color? What was the inspiration for that color? The more you understand like how people are thinking in other parts of the world, or just, it may not be your style, it may not be your taste, but opening up a book and constantly just looking at images and reading the descriptions is the best way to understand inspiration. And then you Thank you so much for listening to Ask an Architect. I'm your host, Jack Baldwin with Reynard Architectural Designs. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the show and what we can do to address your questions that you might have for us. Until next time, thanks for listening to Ask an Architect.